a long I think it was a long holiday weekend, and I know we were closed Sunday and Monday. We did have 50 people register for this program, but I'm just thinking that a lot of people are going to just watch the video later and just haven't had a chance to pick up their kits. So with that being said, we still have a lot of great participants tonight. So we'll get started with our strawberry shortcakes program. And I just want to thank Danielle Butler for taking the time to put all the kits together for us and leading us through this program tonight. So Danielle, whenever you're ready, take it away.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys. And I was saying to Amber earlier that the strawberries really just look fantastic. So I think this is a perfectly timed session. You could definitely do this kind of dessert with any fresh berry. You could mix blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, whatever you like. You'll find that this recipe lends itself really well to being adapted to your favorite berries. My name is Danielle Butler. I run an online bakery called The Bite Size Bake Shop. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at _Bite Size Bake Shop. We started our bakery in 2013 with miniature desserts. Everything was just a bite, you know, it was a little miniature sized cupcake or cookie bite, because I found that my kids would go to the bakery and they would request a cookie or a cupcake the size of their head, and they would only take a bite or two, and then the rest would just get wasted. So as I was thinking about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to spend my time, I said I might want to venture into this miniature world. So I had gotten some miniature cupcake pans from Pampered Chef. Girlfriend had a Pampered Chef party, and I just started making desserts, and I kind of miniaturized all of the things I could think of and adapted recipes and lots of recipe testing. And I spent a number of years at the Portland Farmers Market, kind of building my clientele. And then I started teaching classes, and I was teaching to kids classes at the Northborough Montessori School in Stony Brook, doing baking classes with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And then I started doing some classes for the adults through the Middle Country Public Library, and then through the Emma Clark Library System here in Pawtucket. I live in Three Village. My house is in Port Jeff, where I do most of my baking now. But I am fully licensed and insured. So I carry full insurance. God forbid there's ever a problem. Knock on wood. The bakery has exploded in a good way to include lots of standard size treats, cupcakes, cookies, decorated royal icing sugar cookies, and all kinds of cakes and treats. And we pretty much don't say no. So if somebody has an idea for something and they're interested, I try to always accommodate the order. So thank you for learning with me tonight, and I hope that you'll find this interesting and valuable, and that there might be a question or two that you have that I might be able to answer for you. I have no professional training. I have just spent hundreds and thousands of hours in the kitchen at this point. I am a full-time mom. I have 3 kids. They are 5, 11, and 13. I'm involved in my kids' school, and my business gives me the opportunity to be involved in the community and in school and all of those wonderful places. So we're going to get started. If you haven't already and you're going to cook alongside with us, you want to start by preheating your oven to 425. That is going to be the right temperature for our biscuits once we cut them and make them. But in your kit were provided the dry ingredients, which include a ½ cup of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. That should all have been in a Ziploc bag that you got. And then separate from that was a small container with just granulated sugar in it. So we're going to start with the small container of granulated sugar, and you're going to need your strawberries. We asked for 3 cups quartered. Quartered just means cut into pieces. We're going to start by adding 2 tablespoons of that sugar, which is half of the quarter of a cup, right? A quarter of a cup is 4 tablespoons. So we're going to take 2 of those tablespoons and sprinkle over our strawberries. And we're going to give this a little toss. And this sugar will start to activate the juices in the strawberry, and they start to macerate, and that just means start to break down. So we're going to cover the strawberries in sugar, and then I'm going to stick these in the fridge until we're ready for them, so that they can continue to break down and release some of those delicious strawberry juices. So that's the first step, pretty easily done. The next thing that we're going to do is start our biscuit dough. For this, you're going to need to add 3/4 of a cup of cold butter that's been cut and cubed. So I left this in the fridge. I just took it out a few minutes before we started. Cold butter is going to work better than soft butter for a number of reasons. But the most important reason is because the butter will form the delicious pockets of air in our biscuit. And if it's too melted, it loses all of that structure, and it will just make for a flat biscuit and not an airy biscuit. So we want the butter to provide a kind of a puff of steam as it evaporates inside your biscuit, but it's also going to take with it the sugar and the flour and help provide some of that structure in our biscuit. So we're going to need 3/4 of a cup of cold cubed butter. We're going to need 1/2 cup of whole milk, and then a tablespoon of heavy creamer milk and sugar for sprinkling on top. You could easily do this with buttermilk. You could use heavy cream in the recipe if that's all you had and didn't have whole milk. You certainly could adapt this as necessary. Skim milk will not give you the same result because you need some of the fat in the milk to help carry the flavor and the butter and the sugar in your biscuit. So we're going to take our dry mixture from your Ziploc bag, and you want to empty that into a mixing bowl. This is going to be all done, this portion, by hand, or you could do it in a food processor. I'm just going to use my tools here. So I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of cold butter. So 3/4 of a cup is a stick and a half. Each stick is a 1/2 cup of butter. So we're going to take that butter and we're going to start to mix it into our dry ingredients. So when we get to this point of our mixture, there are a couple of tools that you can use. You can certainly just use a fork. You can use this fancy tool called a pastry blender. The pastry blender is going to allow you to break up the butter. You push the butter down into the bottom of the bowl, and it all kind of gets stuck to the end. But I prefer, in all honesty, to just use my fingers because I feel like I can gauge how well mixed everything is and how big my butter pieces are in a way that I can't when I use the tools. So I'll start by breaking up the big pieces of butter with a fork. And then once the big pieces of butter are incorporated and start to kind of get smushed down, I'm going to switch over and just use my fingers. And there's a little motion that you use to kind of distribute the butter evenly in your flour mixture. And I like to say you want to make coarse sand. So you're going to take your mixture, your butter and your flour, and you're going to smush it between your fingers, almost like you're pushing it out to make these flat butter discs. You want the butter to really be flattened and well incorporated. So you're going to use your thumbs and your forefingers to press against each other and smush out. And that's going to smush the butter. It's going to provide more surface area for our flour and sugar and baking powder to hold on to. And you're just going to keep working this until all of the butter has been incorporated. So there was a decent amount of butter for these biscuits. It was 3/4 of a cup to a 1/2 cup of flour. So that's going to make for a really delicious buttery biscuit. I was telling Amber before everybody got on that when I was a kid, there was a Roy Rogers not too far from our house, and they made the most delicious biscuits at Roy Rogers, and they were buttery and so good. And my sister worked there in high school, and when she worked the late shift, she got to bring home the extra biscuits. And it was always such an awesome night when she brought home these delicious buttery biscuits to make strawberry shortcake with. So you're going to find that there is a fair amount of butter in these biscuits. You're probably going to need some extra flour for dusting your surface, your work surface, when we go to roll them out, because they're going to be a little bit wet and sticky. You don't want to work them too much, just to kind of incorporate the flour and all of those ingredients together. I'm just wiping off my fingers now on the side of my bowl. And we're going to turn this mixture out onto a floured surface and kind of spread it out a little bit and use our cutter to, I'm going to add some more flour to my board, some of my fingers, and I'm going to turn this dough out. And we're going to kind of loosely put it together. We're going to, just use our hands to smush it into a disc or a rectangle. And you might need some more flour to sprinkle on top. You want it to look like it's come together, but only just barely. The more you work it, the looser the butter will get, and you don't want your butter to melt. So I'm just gonna push it together and make a disc or a rectangle. And then I have a circle cutter here that I'm going to use to make my biscuit shape. So the thing about biscuits is that they do best in a group. So when you are cutting biscuits, unlike sugar cookies, where we would tell you to push down and twist to make your cookie shape, when you're making biscuits, you just want to push straight down. You don't want to twist the cookie cutter. You're going to push straight down and you're going to lift it up. And you can see you can do that a couple of times in your dough here. And then we're going to move these biscuits to our cookie sheet, and we want them to be touching each other. The biscuits really rely on each other to rise, and then we'll get a better poof if they're touching. So we're going to do these biscuits touching each other. I'm probably going to get maybe 4 of these size biscuits out of my dough. Depending on what size cutter you use, you can get a few more than that, 5 or 6. You could certainly double this recipe and make a larger batch. So I'm just pushing my dough pieces back together here. And you'll notice we didn't use a rolling pin or anything to flatten out the dough. Just using our fingers, the butter, the flour, the baking powder. These are pretty simple biscuits. But by not twisting, we're just pushing down, we don't seal the edges of the dough. So that allows the biscuit to rise. If we twisted the biscuit, the cutter, it would seal the edges of the dough. It would cut like the cells, collapses them, and then you're not able to get that nice puff. They would stay kind of flat, which would probably still taste good, but it's not going to give us the beautiful biscuit to slice and make our layers with. So I am able to, I think, make 4 good-sized biscuits. This is a 4-inch cutter. This is just what I had on the counter. You could certainly, again, like I said, make them a little bit smaller. And I put these biscuit rounds on a parchment paper lined cookie sheet because I don't like them to stick. And I'm going to make a little tiny baby one because that's the leftover dough that I had. And this is what they look like on the sheet. I just did that off camera. So I put them touching each other where they could fit, and that will allow the biscuits to rise up together. When they're done cooking, then I will we'll let them cool for a few minutes, and then we will slice them and be able to layer in our berries and our whipped cream. So I'm just going to take a second and clean up and get my stuff in the oven. So bear with me for 1 minute. Are there any questions about what we've done so far? You can feel free to put them in the chat. You can unmute yourselves to ask. And don't feel like pressured. You don't have to. ask questions, but we're here to help you guys out. I'm gonna put these in my very hot oven and wash my hands. I'm just gonna double check the cook time. On these biscuits, you want them to, oh, you know what, I forgot to brush them. Sorry. We're gonna add a little bit of heavy cream and sprinkle a little sugar on top. It's gonna give it just a little bit of a beautiful golden brown color and a little crunch right on top. So I have some heavy cream here. I am going to open it. And you can just use the back of a spoon or a pastry brush if you have. I'm just going to take my spoon and I'm just going to kind of dab it in the heavy cream. And then I'm going to spread it right on top of the biscuit dough. Just like that. And that'll give our sugar something to stick to. So these are going to get all beautiful and fluffy. There's a fair amount of baking powder in the biscuit, and the baking powder is our leavening agent, and the leavening agent is what makes it rise. So I am just going to add some sugar just right on top, sprinkle it on the biscuit, and make it a little crunchy. You could add a little cinnamon if you wanted to kick it up a notch. You could definitely put cinnamon or nutmeg inside the biscuit dough if you wanted to add a little spice variety. All right, now these are ready to go in the oven. 15 minutes. And then we're going to bake my oven for 10 minutes. Sometimes can be a little wonky. But know that when you start to smell is a good item to check. So if you smell your item in the oven, and this is a good baking rule across the board, if you smell it, you should probably pay attention to what's in the oven. All right. So we're going to move on to the heavy cream. And I'm just going to switch my camera angle so you can see here. This is my mixer. Mixers come in lots of shapes and sizes. In order to make heavy cream, to make whipped cream, we're going to take heavy cream. We're going to mix in our heavy cream and a little bit of sugar and a little bit of vanilla extract. So this is going to be a half a cup of heavy cream. Just going to go into the bowl of my mixer, and I have on my mixer the whisk attachment. So I'm going to use this whisk attachment to make my whipped cream. It will happen pretty quickly once you turn the mixer on. So you want to mix your cream and dribble in your half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you're going to use those other 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. So the remaining sugar from your little package is going to get sprinkled right in there with your heavy cream. And I like to just take my mixer piece and give those a little mix around. And I'm going to mute myself for just a second while this is going, because it's going to get really loud, and then I'll show you what the result is when it's done mixing. So you can see that this is the beginning of our whipped cream. It's not quite there yet, but I want you to see the consistency. It's still pretty runny. It's getting a little foamy, but we're gonna turn the mixer back on and let it keep going. You know, within 3 or 4 minutes, you should have a beautiful bowl of whipped cream. So that was maybe 1 minute on high, and you have this beautiful whipped cream that will taste delicious on our shortcake. So I'm also going to stick this in the fridge until we're ready to use it. But you can see that our whipped cream is of good consistency. And the extract that we use means that you could certainly flavor this with other extracts. I put a little vanilla in, but you could use strawberry or raspberry. You could use banana if you have banana. The world is really your oyster. So I'm just going to put this in the fridge for a few minutes until our stuff comes out of the oven. And we're a little bit waiting now for our shortcakes to bake. And I can smell them in the oven. Oh my goodness. So we had a little baking foul here. I will show you what happens even to the professional bakers. I forgot to put milk in my batter. So if you will bear with me for 1 second, see it happens even to us. Our recipe called for milk on top of our dry ingredients and butter, and I didn't do that. So our biscuit dough just turned into a big steaming buttery mess. So unfortunately, there's no way to save that. We will just start again because that's what we do, right? You make a mistake, it's not a big deal, we just start again. So if I could ask your patience for a few minutes while I just gather my dry ingredients, I will show you what the biscuits are supposed to look like when they're done correctly. I promise that baking doesn't usually happen like this, but sometimes you're not quite prepared for mistakes to happen. So we're going to start with a half a cup of flour. We're going to mix in a tablespoon of baking powder. And the baking powder was our leavener, remember? We're going to use a half a teaspoon of salt. So Amber, I'm sure there's no way we can, like cut to this part of the video for the recording, right? Just edit out that whole first 20 minutes.
We can. Yes, of course we can.
Oh, well, that was great. Yeah.
Yes. So just start like you did from the beginning. And at least the people who watch the recording,
Well, I appreciate everybody's bearing with us. So in your kit, you were given The granulated sugar, you are given the flour, the baking powder, and the salt in a little bag. So that is what I've put here in my mixing bowl. You will need to add to this a stick and a half of butter. And we're going to cube that butter and mix it in with our fork or pastry blender or our fingers, because that works just as well. We find that if you cube the butter first, it's a little easier to break up. And you're not trying to break such big pieces into your mixture. So I'm just going to move this bowl so you can see what I'm doing. When I cube butter, I like to cut it in half. And then I turn it over and I cut it in half again. And that will allow us to make beautiful little cubes, just to make it a little easier to incorporate it into our butter. So we're going to try this again. We're going to put the butter into our dry ingredients. And it's all garbage. And I need to, I'm just going to sit with my spatula, but like I said, you can certainly use a fork or a pastry blender to break it up a little bit. If it were really cold butter, it's going to take a little bit more work to mix it in. You want your mixture to look like coarse sand, well incorporated. You're going to use your fingers to mix it. So this time, when we're done mixing the butter in, and we have our dough, we're going to add half a cup of cold milk, which is the step that I missed before. So we will add our butter in. We're just going to keep mixing, cream this butter and the flour in. I'm just going to use my spatula to make sure it's all really well incorporated. Fingers, spatula, pastry blender, fork, all good. All right, so to this mixture, which you want to be kind of just come together, we're going to add a half a cup of cold milk. So now our mixture is going to get kind of wet and gloppy looking. And you're definitely going to need to add flour to your board in order to cut it with your biscuit cutter or your circle cutter. This is going to be a little wet looking, but I'm just going to keep working it because we want to make sure that the milk gets well incorporated. Going to mix with all that flour and baking powder. It looks kind of ragged, the dough, but a little bit more like biscuit dough. I'm going to grab a new sheet of parchment paper that I can do my cutting on. You could use a pastry mat. You could certainly just do it on your counter if you wanted to. I need a little more flour. And again, when you go to cut these, you want to remember to cut straight down and no twisting, the way that you would cut a cookie. Because if you twist, you're going to peel off the edges of the dough, and then your biscuit won't rise. All right. So this looks a little bit more like biscuit dough. It's definitely soft and a little ragged looking. So you want to be really gentle with it. And we're going to pat it into a little circle and make sure that we use a little bit more flour so that comes together nicely. But we don't want it to stick to anything. So I'm going to make my circle probably about 1/2 inch thick. And then I'm going to use my biscuit cutter to make some nice shapes. And we talked about, just put this one in the garbage. All right. All right, so I have my pan here. It has a liner on it already. I am going to set it aside here and use my round cutter to cut some circles. We're going to press down, but we're not going to flip, just down. And then we're going to move very gently our biscuits over to our baking sheet. You could certainly do this as drop biscuits if you didn't want to use the cutter. I would just encourage you also to just make sure that they're touching each other, right? Those biscuits like to be friends with the people next door. So a little bit gentle, a little more flour. And then re-roll it. You're going to push it back together, probably add some more flour. And I might be able to get 2 more actually out of this last little bit of dough. It's pretty soft. So all in all, I've probably added another 1/4 cup of flour. You want to make sure that your dough has come together and that it's not going to fall apart on you. So I'm going to make 1 more circle cut, and then I should have enough dough even left to do 1 more. So that would make 6 or 5 full biscuits. And I'll just put this back together. And a trick that I have learned recently, if you have a little bit of dough left and you're not sure how much you need for your cutter, is to take your cutter and put it down and put the dough inside, and you can flatten your remaining dough. This works great for cookies. If you get to the end of your batch and you have like 1 more cookie to make, and you feel like you're out of dough, you're not sure what you're gonna have left. You can fill the inside, and then you can cut it, and then you'll get the perfect edge, and you have enough dough to make your biscuit. All righty, so that is what our biscuits hopefully will look like to bake appropriately. Never a dull moment, right? All right, so we're going to try this again. We're going to go into the oven, 425, and we're going to set that timer again for 10 minutes, and we'll check them. Again, if you can smell them, you should check them. That's a good rule of thumb across the board, because they may be cooked. Your oven, I've had some issues with my oven lately. It's been running a little over temperature. So I bought a thermometer to check the inside temperature, and it was not quite coming up to temperature. So I had to recalibrate it, which was an exciting adventure. And now it's a little wonky all over the place. So we're doing the best that we can. Typically, that is our approach to life. So when we are finished baking our biscuits, we are going to let them cool for a few minutes, and then we're going to take the strawberries that we sugared earlier and our whipped cream, and we're going to slice our biscuits open, and we will have a delicious treat, hopefully, as a result. I'm just going to spend a minute cleaning up. So that is our biscuit recipe. I appreciate your patience bearing with me tonight and knowing that mistakes happen in every kitchen and it's okay to start over again because sometimes we can't save it. Any questions? Anybody want to tell us about your biggest baking misadventures? Was the biggest baking fail you've had in your kitchen? Any takers? No? I hear you. I'd like to think that it happens to all of us, right?
I would think so. I'm trying to think of one, but I usually just buy the cake for a party, so at least I can have a good ending.
I read a book once where the woman said that it's homemade if you open the box, right? So if she would buy a pie at the grocery store and she would take it out of the box and she would smash up the top of the pie a little bit just to give it that really authentic homemade look. So I feel okay about my baked goods. We try our best.
Yeah, I actually, it wasn't a complete disaster, but I am the worst at decorating cakes, and I always have this vision that it's going to be amazing, and it's just not, and I'm just disappointing. So everyone's like, it tastes fine, but I just really like things to be a certain way. So I've
Yep.
given up that because I feel like I'm always rushing to do it, and it just takes time. That's, I think, the key with decorating the cake.
For sure. And I've learned a lot over the years. You figure out what works well in terms of icing consistency and even recipes for your cake decorating. Your buttercreams will make a difference, and certain buttercreams do better than others. It's all just practice, right? The more we practice, the more we know. Oh,
I did serve raw chicken parm to a party one time because I put the chicken parm outside, and I didn't take into account that it was wintertime, so I didn't take into account that it really had to come up to temperature. So while I cooked it for like half an hour, 45 minutes, it all just kind of froze out in my garage. And when I went to cut into it, it was completely frozen. So not good.
Not good, but it happens, right?
It does.
This is life.
Good thing I made a lasagna too.
All right, so we have some spread, but not as bad in my wonky oven. I will tell you that homemade biscuits, homemade shortbread. You can definitely use biscuits if you don't want to mix your own ingredients. There's a great shortcake biscuit recipe on the Bisquick box. That's a pre-made mixture that has your flour and your leavening agents already mixed into it. You just mix that with a little bit of milk, and that's a pretty foolproof baking mixture. You can also use canned biscuits if you're in a pinch for time. The grand biscuits, the ones that have the layers, bake up really nicely, and you could easily slice those and add your berries and your whipped cream. So you have kind of like a semi-homemade dessert. You still bake the biscuits without the fuss of biscuits exploding all over your oven. And the strawberries and the whipped cream are the delicious kind of cakey part. You could also do this kind of strawberry shortcake with cake if you wanted to make a vanilla sheet cake and use your circle cutters to cut little rounds. You could definitely do a little layered Napoleon-like dessert with a vanilla layer cake or a chocolate layer cake if you wanted to do a chocolate strawberry shortcake. That would be good. Lots of opportunities for customization too. I said before, you could use different berries. You could flavor your whipped cream. If you did blueberries, you could put a little lemon zest in your heavy cream and make them kind of a lemon blueberry. That would be delicious together. You could make a little sauce out of your berries if you cook them with a little bit of sugar. What else? Questions? You're all keeping your fingers crossed that my biscuits work out this time, right? I am too. 2 more minutes. I'm gonna pop my head in there 1 more second and see. All right, they are looking semi-biscuit-like, so we'll just give them a few more minutes to cook. You want to make sure that they are nice and evenly browned. Since we started again, and we're gonna jump ahead to this part that hopefully works, I will say again that my name is Danielle Butler, and I am the owner and chief treat maker for the Bite Size Bake Shop. The bake shop started in 2013, and I was a consultant working on strategic planning and nonprofit management, and I have always loved to bake. And so I decided that I was going to just pursue my passion, and I was going to start baking. And I did both for a while. I had my own consulting agency, and I was working with nonprofits, and I was baking on the side. And eventually, I grew the bakery to the point where I was just able to sustain our business, which is great. I have 3 kids, and the bakery allows me the flexibility to participate in their school lives and after school lives and get them to all of their activities. And it's for sure been a great learning experience. I have worked the farmers market circuit. I have been showcasing in restaurants. I had a friend who owned a restaurant in Fort Jeff Village, and he sold my treats for a while. And it's been a really great way to get to know people in the community and pursue what you love. So if you're interested in baking, and it's, there's a lot of kind of home-based bakery businesses out there, just, start asking questions. It's lots of people doing it now. There's insurance available if you want to carry policy to protect yourself. It's just a lot of trial and error, and figure out what is your niche in the market. I mentioned that we started making bite-sized treats, and that was how we kind of entered the market. Nobody else was doing that at the time, and it made us different. And now we have a pretty stable clientele that come back for all of their party needs. So whether it's cakes or cupcakes or cookies, we run the gamut now. And I try not to say no. So if it's something that I haven't done before, I will be honest and say, I haven't attempted that, but I can try it. And sometimes it's just a matter of doing some recipe testing to find a recipe that will work. But knowing that, it's a little bit of trial and error. I'm gonna check the biscuits. They're not as poofy as I would have hoped.
I do have a question. I was just wondering what kind of toppings you think they could add to the strawberry shortcakes, like for extra flavor, if you have any ideas on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could do chocolate shavings. You could add some chocolate chips. Chocolates and strawberries go so nicely together. You could add coconut. You could add some shredded coconut. If you were going to go the kind of tropical route, I might suggest chopping up some pineapple with your strawberries and doing a little pina colada strawberry shortcake.
Yeah.
Call it something like a strawberry daiquiri. That might be fun. My buzzer's going off. Hold on 1 second. The coconut.
If you were going to do the strawberry daiquiri idea, is there like any liqueur you could add to the whipped cream too, to kind of?
Definitely could. I have to switch my earbud. You could use framboise, the Chambord. You could, I don't know if there's a strawberry flavored liqueur. I'm sure there is. The Coopers probably has like a strawberry snap kind of, or strawberry vodka. I do like this brand of extract. This is Loran. You can get them at Walmart or Michael's, and they're emulsions. So they're a little bit thicker than your typical extract, and they are amazing flavor, I have to say. The vanilla, the clear artificial vanilla, is what I use in my cakes and my recipes now, but they come in a million different flavors. So I love the coconut. I love the strawberry. I have raspberry in the closet right now. I've used, there is a princess one that tastes like cake batter, all different flavors. But you could definitely add a little alcohol to the whipped cream. I wouldn't add too much because it'll kind of make it loose. It'll be hard to get a good stiff whip on your heavy cream. But you could definitely add at least a tablespoon for flavor. The alcohol is a good idea, right? Who doesn't like that? You could also marinate your berries in a little bit of alcohol. That would be another way to infuse them with more flavor. So you could take your blueberries, your strawberries, your raspberries, your blackberries, and as they're macerating, add a couple of tablespoons of whatever your liquor of choice would be. If you had raspberries, you could use Swiss board. If you were doing, you could use like Grand Marnier, like a little bit of orange flavor would be good with the berries, I feel like. And a little bit of orange zest in the biscuit dough. I kind of try to mimic the flavors so that you have multiple layers, so it's not just a kind of one note opportunity. So if you're going to flavor your biscuit or you're going to flavor your berries, try to add that same flavor or a different kind of component. So you could add zest of a citrus fruit in your biscuit dough, and you could add the extract in your berries or your whipped cream. So I'm going to show you how my biscuits turned out, and they are a fairly flat biscuit, unfortunately. They didn't quite get the spread that they did before, but they're not as puffy as I would have expected them to be. And this just could be my wonky oven. So they will make for delicious eating, but they don't quite have the rise that I was expecting them to have. I'm going to let them cook for a few more minutes. My oven is definitely being a little bit strange tonight. But when you bake your biscuits, you would assume that they would look like a beautiful, regular little biscuit. Puffy and golden brown and delicious. Mine look a little bit more like pancakes, unfortunately. I'm not so loud. So let's talk about leavening agents for a minute. So we use baking powder in this recipe. Baking powder is a mixture of the baking soda and cream of tartar and cornstarch. And so it is not quite as strong as baking soda by itself. So if you had a recipe that called for baking powder and you substituted in the same amount of baking soda, you would have a baked good that tasted like soap. Too much baking soda does not taste good, but you need the rise. The baking soda gets activated by the acid in your baked good. So in our recipe, that was the milk. The baking soda and the milk, the baking soda and vinegar will create a chemical reaction to create bubbles and air pockets in our baked good, and that's what gives it some lift. So it's entirely possible that maybe we got a bad batch of baking soda or baking powder. This is fairly new. It says best if used by February 2nd, 2023. See the expiration date on the corner. But it's entirely possible that maybe the baking soda didn't work. I mean, the baking powder didn't work. We put a whole tablespoon in there, so I would have expected there to be a little more rise to those biscuits. What else? You want to see what it looks like if we assemble one? We're going to need our strawberries out of the oven, out of the refrigerator, and our whipped cream. So you can go ahead and grab those items. And I'm going to grab a plate to build on. And the strawberry shortcakes are something that I wouldn't make too far ahead of time. You could definitely make the components, as I suggested earlier, and then you would want to assemble them before you serve them. So you could put these out and have people build their own. That would be a fun kind of dessert bar. You could have a few different topping choices and have people make their own shortcakes. You could prepare everything ahead of time. We mix our strawberries with just a little bit of sugar because I know my kids are going to want to eat them. But if you were hosting adult friends, you could definitely add a little bit of delicious alcohol or some other flavor in there. So our strawberries, you can see, are very kind of juicy looking now. They're like wet, and that's a result of the sugar. They started to release their juices. The sugar dissolves, and it makes them taste a little bit more like delicious strawberries. And we're gonna put our shortcake. You would want your biscuits to be a little bit cool to the touch. These are a little bit warm, but for our demonstration purposes, I will show you that didn't quite rise. It's there. It's got some body to it, but it didn't get much height. So it would be hard to slice this. If you got a better rise on your biscuit, you would be able to slice it right in half and provide 2 layers. I don't think we're going to get that with this biscuit, but I'll cut it in half so I will make my 2 layers that way. And I'm going to put a little scoop of whipped cream, whoop, right on top of my biscuit. And then I will add some of my delicious strawberries. And then I will place that other piece of biscuit right on top. And then just layer again, a little bit more whipped cream and a little bit more strawberry. And you end up with this beautiful little dessert. And there is our finished strawberry shortcake. Can you see that? It smells really good. I hope it tastes okay. I think that you all will have much more success in your kitchen than I had here tonight. But if you want to send us your pictures, I'm sure Amber will forward them on. If you try the recipe, let us know how it worked out for you. And let us know if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Danielle, for sticking through it. Just like our flat biscuits, but it does really show you that sometimes things happen and you just have to push through, and it's okay. And I'm sure they taste just fine and your kids will approve. I think it looks delicious and I would love a bite of it.
It's pretty good. I'm pretty excited about it. Let's see. It tastes pretty good.
Okay, great. As Danielle mentioned, if you come up with some good ideas, try something out, let us know. We'd be happy to post it on our social media or just share your ideas with people. So be sure to email me if you want to share those. I emailed everyone the Zoom link tonight, so you can certainly share it. And we'll go ahead and add the full recipe into the comments below, so you can take a quick look at that as well if you missed the beginning where Danielle went through what you need and what you had in your kit. So be sure to include that as well. So I hope everyone had a great night. If you think of anything, just give us an email and we'll be happy to answer it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great evening.
Thanks, Donna. Thank you for sticking through, and I hope your strawberry shortcakes came out delicious. Thanks, Donna. Okay, bye everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.